Hello, my name is David Plylar, and I'm with the Music Division of the Library of Congress. And it is my great pleasure to be here today with Hélène Grimaud, who's a pianist who's going to be performing in the Coolidge Auditorium this evening, performing music of Beethoven, Brahms, and Bach Busoni. So thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm delighted. Thank you.
We happen to have some materials that are related directly to your program, and so I thought we could take a look at those and just maybe notice a few things that are unusual about them or different about them from the published versions that we maybe know so well. And the first one is one of the crown jewels of our collection, which is the Opus 109 Sonata of Beethoven.
Yes.
And just from the very beginning, it's a little bit, I always find his handwriting a little bit hard to read. But that does say Sonata für das Hammerklavier. So it's another Hammerklavier sonata, but not the Hammerklavier sonata.
Yes, I guess technically it's correct. Well, this is, of course, such a treat. It's wonderful to get to look at this because it's moving, of course, to be given the chance to lay eyes on a manuscript like this.
No, it's definitely, we always feel very privileged. We don't pull these things out that often, so it's always a pleasure for us to be able to have an excuse to do it. So thank you. I will carefully turn.
Yes, I will definitely let you do that. You know what comes to mind just looking at the page? Is the rhapsodic nature of the piece. You know, there's something so organized about, of course, the urtext and the transcription, the literal transcription in the published version. But when you look at this, you really feel this stream of consciousness process almost. There's just so much freedom on the page already. I mean, this sonata, of course, is of a rhapsodic nature.
Yeah.
To begin with, but it's really fascinating to see this. It really opens the door to a different horizon.
Yeah, and one of the stories behind this first movement was that it was potentially going to be in use as a bagatelle in a different collection of works, and so it may have been. It's not known for sure, but it may have been repurposed to fit the sonata. But of course, it fits so well with the third movement and everything else that comes. So he was able to put everything together. Yes. But you're absolutely right. I love how kind of easy it is to see the gestures and movement on the page.
Yes.
And one of the things that I think is also quite interesting about this manuscript is that it gives us a real chance to see what the original tempo markings were, and how they changed. And in this case, I think, it's supposed to be vivace, right? Vivace Manuscript, I think, is the published. But this one is just the vivace at this point. So at some point he thought better of it.
Yes. Well, we sort of all slow down as time passes, probably to do also with the substance of the sound of the instruments, you know, remembering the instrument available at the time he was writing this music, although by this time he was writing way beyond the capabilities of those pianos. But still, it's, tempo really, at the end of the day, has to do with the resonance of the note, which leads you to playing the next one. And it's the return of the sound of the note you just played that is going to determine when the next one comes.
Right,
so
right.
It's intimately connected, the two acoustics and tempo as well. So.
Well, that's an interesting point, because one of the things, I'll scooch ahead just a little bit, was the end of this movement.
Yes.
So one of the things that, speaking of the resonance and how you deal with this in performance, I've been just very curious about how you handled this, because originally, as you can see here, he had an attacca il presto, I think, and originally the marking was presto instead of prestissimo. And so, but then he crossed it out very vigorously.
I love this, about him, because when you play his music, perhaps less in this score, but you know how he likes sforzandi.
Right, right.
And, you know, every time I almost can feel him going. This brusqueness, this spirit, this temperament, and you can feel it, and it's obvious there by the trait de crayon, as we say in French.
But there was one detail that was pointed out to me at one point. I can't remember exactly by who, but there's the pedal marking here that is then lifted on the next page, and that seemed to make it into some. I'm not sure all editions, but some editions, and so it makes you wonder: is it really? It's not supposed to be an interruptive attacca, but one where you connect them somehow, or how do you handle it?
Well, I haven't been doing that, but it makes a lot of sense. And if you think about, I mean, I do it in the spirit of attacca, but there's definitely an interruption in the sound. That said, I'm a bit of a lead foot, and when you read about, you know, the accounts which Czerny left us of Beethoven's playing, he loved his pedal, his sustained pedal. So this fits beautifully. And this idea of, you know, suspension, something which remains and floats and then all of a sudden kind of, you know, explodes into something of a totally different character, but nevertheless connected. It's very fitting.
Yeah, yeah. And also nice harmonically too, because then you have that the starkness of the minor.
That you know, yes.
right after it.
Yes, indeed.
Well, let me show a few more pages, especially the maybe looking into the third movement, just to. Yeah, we'll stop here. This is great.
Oh.
I think sometimes it's just like getting an ink blot or something and getting frustrated by it or something. You feel like you can read the minds of these composers.
Yes, really, absolutely fantastic. Well, there's, you know, sometimes this latent, I almost want to say violence. It's an ugly word, but it's of course part of nature, and it was definitely in his nature.
Sure.
And that's what makes, you know, gives the music this kinetic energy also. Well, clearly to see here.
Right. I would have been, I think, terrified to be his copyist to make sure that you're doing these correctly for.
Yes, terrifying. Yeah. Oh. Most intimate sentiment. Of course, it's a beautiful indication.
I know that the final version, or the published version rather, has Gesang full, but this version just has Gesang. And I've often thought about what it is, why that would be changed, but it doesn't seem to be just a bare song. There's a certain hymn-like quality to the music that may be.
Very much so. You're absolutely right. Of course, both are not so much justified as I mean, they're both accurate, but perhaps Gesang alone gives more freedom of interpretation.
Sure.
But it's of course always the interesting challenge on a percussive instrument to find that sustain, to go into the next note.
Sometimes there's a kind of a difference between the quality of the sound that you hear. Like I'm thinking of as we get into the sixth variation, where you have all the trills, and then what it looks like on the page. And I think it's interesting. I think that the let's see, I'll pull up for. Yeah, there we go. Certainly get it.
Interesting too, because in that first page of the theme and variations, you can see how he gives himself almost sort of spatially on the paper, when you have this arpeggiated chord, which is a long value,
Yeah.
even though it's clearly indicated how long the value is, and you could immediately move to write the next note, and you see this amount of breathing room before and after, and so it also gives this connotation of emphasis, on that chord, and again this idea of something which is suspended before it resolves, even if it's only a partial resolution, harmonically. So it's really, really interesting.
I think this is a little bit, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems a little bit unusual how the there's more tempo changes, or markings at least, with each variation, versus a lot of variation sets that don't have independent markings at each variation. But it seems like he's always trying to relate it to that initial tempo. And so, and here he felt maybe it was redundant to have the alla breve, but by the time he gets to the sixth variation, I think that issue of, and he didn't label that variation either. That was variation 5 or 4.
4,
and then, But then when we get to the variation 6, he was speaking about the tempo primo, and it has that space again. It makes me think that he's thinking, okay, I know I'm going to be doing all these trills and things, so let me
better enlarge it. Yes, absolutely. But that's also an interesting thing about tempo, is that you go with the shortest value, and that is what is going to be determining the pulsation ultimately. And if there is that sense, that red thread throughout the variations, even though he's giving us very, very clear characters for each, it's also something to keep in mind for the sake of unity.
Yeah. Again, that's where the sense of space too.
With this wave of the trill. It's really thrilling to look at this. I mean, it's really a gift. So thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. We're excited to hear it. So we haven't heard it in our hall for a long time, so it'll be a big treat. The problem with showing manuscripts is that we could look at things all day for each one.
Yes.
But there is something also just kind of honest. I love the way that this one ends, where it ends with the theme coming back, and it just has this sort of squiggle as a. It's just it's a
Yes. An unassuming end.
Yeah, it could keep going, but decide not to.
Yes.
Something like
that's true. It's very true. And it's also intriguing, isn't it, to see this no finality to it.
Yeah. Oh no, I was definitely struck by that.
Thank you for pointing it out.
Oh, sure. Well, let me also on your program, you're going to be doing some of the late Brahms works, Opus 116 and 117. We actually don't have any of those pieces, but we do happen to have, and I will just put this aside. We do have 4 intermezzi from Opus 118 and 119. They're unusual for their size, as you can see. And this, of course, feel free to turn as you'd like.
I love this one. I mean, of course, I played all 4 cycles.
Yeah.
And on a few occasions, even all 4 of them in the same program.
Oh, wow.
So, it's such a sublime piece of music.
And you're referring to the Opus 119, number 1? Yeah. Yeah, that is amazing. So we have Opus 119, 1 through 3, and I'm trying to figure out a way that we can do some type of swap with the British Library, which has the Rhapsody, but they're going to go for it, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, yes. Okay, well.
It would be nice to.
Mean.
I'm greedy, though, that's why.
And you should be. As of course, Opus 118, number 1, also a fantastic opening to that cycle.
Yeah. It's such an interesting...
stormy and declamatory. I mean, it's wonderful. Very precise writing. Very pénible, you would say in German. Very, very detailed, very clean.
These are cleaner copies than a lot of the Brahms manuscripts that we have. I mean, I think that he gets, the longer the piece is, the more frustrated he gets with having to do the physical act of it, so it starts to become drudgery of a sort. But with these short pieces, I think he really gets into it. One of the things that always struck me about these, though, I mean, this one, it makes sense, is his use of the term intermezzo, and especially for when in the like the 116 set, he has capriccio as another option, and then he nevertheless, that opening of 118 is an intermezzo.
Yes.
But it's so stormy.
Yes.
So it's really
Yeah, it is. I wonder if there was also some because it's so unassuming, which is also touching.
yeah.
Because he does not want to pronounce them as big pieces. They're not in the format, but they are so in the substance.
Right.
So it's and of course 116 has the the fantasies, which is different from the other.
It each has its own
Yes,
world.
worlds.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
very true.
And these are independently done, so we can take a look. Skip that.
Thank you.
Sure.
It's so interesting because you always think about, you look at these and you feel like you're looking at the Old Testament. I mean, they're sacred texts, and the score is going to basically give you the keys to the music secrets. And at the same time, you look at this and you realize if it was not for the interpretation that enables the text to live at all and to live anew with every interpretation, it's it remains utterly mysterious. So it's a beautiful synergy between the creator and the humble interpreter.
Well, I mean, that fits into some work that you've done with Clara Schumann, and of course Brahms' relationship with her from the early 1850s until her death. That seems like I think that he sent her 11 of these pieces in 1891, presumably at a point where he felt that they were good enough for her to take a look at, and I think he greatly valued her feedback and his opinions on it. So I'd love to hear a bit more about your projects with Clara in particular, and then in the meantime I can also show you a few things that we have related to her relationship with Brahms.
Wonderful. Yeah, I mean, she was such a muse for these two creators, being a creator herself.
Yeah.
A concert pianist, a mother. I mean, in a way, a superwoman.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how she did it.
But this inspiration that she brought to both of them, it's really miraculous. I mean, if you think about this, and it's really the expression of, love, l'amour avec un grand A. It's really love on the most noble and pure level that it can be, and that is literally awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's something so wholesome and fulfilling in a Grundgesundheit sort of way, where you look at it and it's so organized. It's almost as if it was all there before. It just took birth on paper, but it already existed.
Yeah, in some ways, there's this really human element to this, where these are almost like little postcards that they're already ready to to ship out. And
Yes.
and this is an unusual size. The size is something that that I'm curious about. What scholars have said about it, I just don't know, because a lot of the Brahms manuscripts that we have are they're the single page, they're about the same size, and so
That you would expect.
But a lot of these late piano pieces are on these smaller formats.
Yes, maybe he wanted to be literal about the miniature aspect.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting. I did not know.
Yes. Oh, right. Same here. So this is Opus 119, numbers 2 and 3. And these are, we just recently purchased these in the last 10 years. And these are definitely pre-publication drafts because there's some differences, especially in the second one. But there's...
May I?
So yeah, absolutely. I can scooch out.
Oh, it's just a perfection.
But this is still very neat for Brahms, I think, and
Yes.
and really compact and these are such quirky pieces too.
Oh, yeah, that's
And
a
he-
good word for them. Yes.
He's paired it with the C major. It's such a an unusual.
Well, a change of landscape and color. Yes. Yeah.
And we know that he paired it at least with this because of his because he moves on to it right away.
Mm-hmm. It's really impressive how precise the writing is. And there's so much going on such a small format. But it does not look or feel somehow cramped.
Yeah,
Interesting also. It's very clear to read and what a man.
and there's less variability of like in the Beethoven one, we could see pencil and just different stages that you could kind of lift off of it. This feels like this was done at once. Yeah. But we see and maybe it just depends on whether it was a fair copy for the publisher or
Yes.
those types of things, of course. But you know, it was a physical act that took a lot of time, and a lot of composers that wasn't their favorite thing part of the process. But,
Yes.
well, let me pull out a few other things here with Brahms, unless there's something else you'd like to see.
No, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I could stare at it for the rest of
I know,
the day, but
Luckily, we compare his ending to it's like perfect for
yeah,
that.
this one is very just
really-
very decisively done as this is now the end. Yeah.
But kind of like a peppy end.
Mhm. That's right. Yes, with that arpeggio. Yes. Absolutely wonderful. Well, thank you.
Sure. Well, you recently recorded Opus 32, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we happen to have 3 of the songs, the final one. So I thought that we could pull these out, so you can take a look at your pleasure. And you paired this with Kreisleriana, and is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. With Kreisleriana and Opus 117.
Right.
As a matter
Right.
of fact, yes. There's so many wonderful song cycles, Lida, but this Opus 32 is one of my favorites. I was introduced to it so many years ago by Thomas Korstoff. We had a program together, and it was going to be all Schumann with Dichterliebe and Liederkreis, both cycles. And then he asked if we could change one of the halves and have with Dichterliebe in the first half the Opus 32. And I just hopelessly fell in love with it.
It's such a it's a really attractive piece of or a set of
Yes.
9 songs, I think.
Yes.
That are each one has its own character, and that just comes through so beautifully.
Yeah, and so poetic and poignant and also very personal, as always, when he chose those texts to write music to.
I believe that the Library of Congress has about 25 or so of his lieder. And so we're very rich in our Brahms holdings, and so it's always
Yeah, that's
but
wonderful.
it's a pleasure to get to look at things that people are actually performing, because some of these things are, they're not as well known now, or like especially the
More rarely programmed.
Yeah. Even things that were, like the Liebesliederwaltzes, those types of things. We have some materials for the Neue Liebesliederwaltzes, and but they're not played as much as they were even 50 years ago or something. So it's a pleasure to. I'm glad that you recorded them. I really enjoy the recording as well. So
thank you very much. Thank you. It makes me happy. Well, this is better than Christmas. Just one great surprise after the next.
We have two early works from. I'll start with one at a time. From 1861, unusual sketch page.
Oh yes.
So we don't get to see as many of those as from Brahms as we would like.
Shows us the more vulnerable side.
Yeah.
The softer side.
I wish he hadn't been so concerned about that. And this is, I think, the size that we typically have of his manuscripts. They're much easier to, they're spaced a bit more
easier.
liberally.
Yes.
And so what we're looking at, this is the Handel Variations. And this was coming at a time when he was writing a couple of sets of variations. And this has one of the, you find the kinds of mistakes that you often find in Brahms manuscripts tend to be writing the bassoon line on the wrong line because you just forgot to count. And then you can see like it gets corrected, and that's what it is. But in this one, there's an interesting one as we go where it's a bit into it. This is such a huge set, but right here, where the 15th and the 16th variations are reversed.
Oh.
And it kind of makes, I wonder if this was one of those things that was just a mechanical mistake where he was just going on autopilot or something. Yeah.
It's like homework, school.
Right. Right, somebody corrected it.
Oh, interesting.
But it's unusual to see that because it's definitely the pairs of systems.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Wonder if it was deliberate or.
Right, but that's what I mean because there's enough similarity in the way that it just looks on the page, even if you're just I could just imagine just looking at your sketches or whatever.
You're momentarily distracted and
Right. I'm sure somebody's written about this, but I'm not sure what the answer is, or if it's possible to have an answer. But it's fun to see these types of things. So with some of our manuscripts by people like Mendelssohn or something, they're as you've probably seen before, like the writing is so neat, but it's just wonderful when you see something like you can get in the mind of the composer, imagine them realizing that they're not going to have quite enough room to fit everything, and so they have to squish everything at the very end. And so those are I enjoy those.
Transcendent. One comes to venerate these composers as non-humans. So when you stay in touch with that human side,
right,
it's utterly reassuring.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's fantastic. And a few.
Such a major piece.
Yes. Instrument piece. Amazing.
At the same time that he was working on this piece and finishing it, he
trademark.
Yeah, into the chair, exactly. It's consistent.
Yes.
For his final working there, he was also working on his relationship with Clara was complicated because Robert Schumann was now gone, and one of the last ideas that Robert had was of a theme that was eventually he did actually a set of variations on that were published in the 20th century in the 1930s, I think, But Brahms wanted to write a set of variations on that for piano duet. And so it's one of the few, he did tons of arrangements of his own work. We have a number of those manuscripts for piano duet, but not as many that have a separate opus number that don't have their own. So this is one of those few pieces that actually is a piano duet by itself, and that's it. And I believe that at the time there was some element of wanting to suppress saying when Schumann had written the theme because of the concerns about mental health and things that were
tragic sequence. Yes. Yeah.
And that's why those variations weren't published until later, which is it's hard to imagine, especially because a lot of those late pieces are, it's hard to see that as being an issue, I guess, from this far removed.
Yeah,
but,
true.
But in any case,
yes, I guess they wanted to be respectful and preserve this. Oh.
And this is one of those cases where I imagine it would be a bit more of a nightmare as a composer to have to do the primo and secondo to make it match so that your page turns are, not...
Absolutely. Imagine that. Yes. Yes. An additional challenge. Yes. Yeah.
I think I'll pull up as another kind of look at Clara a bit. There's a set of cadenzas that we have that she wrote that are a little bit tied to Brahms, and it's unclear exactly where the overlaps are. They had different theories at the time. But
tell me more. No.
No. The story goes that in 1856, that was the centennial of Mozart's birth. So Brahms actually played the D minor concerto, and he played his own cadenzas. So Clara had multiple versions of their cadenza for the D minor. This is beginning here. And she was so she played it. I believe she performed the D minor for the first time the year after Brahms had played it, and so she played it, and she played her own cadenzas in general, but she played them developed these over the course of about 30 years, and in that time, it was finally in about, I think it was 1891. Getting ready for the other Mozart centennial when he passed away 100 years earlier, to go ahead and publish them. And at that time, when she did so, she realized that there were some coincidental or not passages that were like the Brahms cadenzas, and so she became very concerned that maybe she had taken his music.
Without even realizing it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think Brahms replied that it wasn't a big deal. that
Very generous of him, but probably that osmosis between the two souls and hearts.
Yeah, and there's a chance though that it might have been Brahms that took from her too. So I think that there's a possibility of that as well. And so we have these multiple drafts of this the D minor one, and then we have as well. I'll put this over. I'll put this over just a little bit here. Maybe so for Brahms cadenzas, we have a Bach cadenza. First keyboard concerto. We have
nice
C minor. So we have one of his cadenzas for that one. Then we have multiple ones for, is that the G major? Yeah.
That would have to be, yeah.
Yeah. And so these are the tiny pages, but the most interesting one to me from the standpoint of a musicological question is this one where there's a Clara Schumann note on the front talking about the relationship between her cadenza and Brahms's for the D minor.
Can you please help me out, because I cannot decipher that.
I don't know I know it's hard to actually. Basically says that she labels in that cadenza the parts that where there's a Brahmsian or a Clara Schumann, there's a borrowing of some sort happening. And
so she's disclosing.
Yeah, she's disclosing that here as a just so that nobody gets the wrong idea. I don't know.
There's a lot of integrity.
Yeah,
nobody would have known differently. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so she marks them with I remember there's a B over here somewhere. Yeah. And
yes.
So things like that. So it's kind of an interesting element. There's a little bit of tiptoeing around things towards the end of their lives. So there was, I think, still just always some
not wanting to take the other one for granted.
Yeah.
So it's and as you said, the relationship was complex. So who knows what the true motivation was for this? But still, it's admirable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that cadenza over there is not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, definitely not. Yeah, I wish people would. I'm not sure if it was only recently published. I think, but it would be great.
I had no idea. This is really fascinating. So many treasures. Thank you for sharing them and for sharing your knowledge with me.
Oh, sure.
Really.
Well, hopefully, maybe if it is published, you can take a look at it and see what see what you think.
I certainly would like to.
Along those lines, I just have a couple more things to show you.
Tell me. Yes.
But since we were talking about Mozart,
yes,
I thought that it would be appropriate. That's a big one. It keeps going on this page as well.
Oh, yes.
So I'm not sure exactly how these.
How the collage happened. Yes.
That is a mystery.
Because it could have just Interesting. Well, it makes the page even more fragile now.
Yes.
Okay.
But you can see this has been restored at some point, but I'd like to see it better restored. Additionally restored. Oh, and I didn't even show you, these were other drafts.
On
other
sweet paper with order.
Yeah, there it is.
Yes.
So I think they were moving towards that one, and then
it's always so interesting to see that obsessive streak in those composers, that they're possessed by this idea that something has not been said enough and needs to be said again.
And I think the fact that they've been in her repertoire, of course, she probably wasn't performing that work as much towards the end of her life, but there's some sort of monument or something like that, having it published it would be some sort of way to do that. So this is our one Mozart piano concerto. And this is the 6th one. And this one dates from 1776.
Could you please turn the page?
Yeah, absolutely.
Also so clear.
Yeah.
Almost childlike in the quality. It's so nice.
In 1776, I guess, he would have been 20 or so, 19 or 20. I feel in many ways with his, it's easier to tell what notes they actually are than with some of the Brahms, where sometimes it's a big, it's so big across.
This is so very legible.
Yeah. And I guess that's a good habit to have been in if you're the performer as well, so that you can
yes.
Make sure that everybody else can try to keep up with you.
And of course, we have a couple of piano rolls from Brahms, but I always wonder, because when you, again, reading about Beethoven's playing and how perhaps what's the word? Not always consistent in the quality, depending on the preparation. But I'm absolutely sure, because the recordings we do have of composers playing their own works, if you think about also Debussy, or it's always so free, so much wilder than one would allow oneself to be when reading the score. So it's, I think, always something to keep in mind, and of course not ever departing from that, that respect for the original page and for the punctuation and all of the indications on it. But it's yes.
No, I think that's a really good point, because the other thing is that you have, it's not that you can't imagine these composers doing the same piece just slightly differently the next day. There's no reason that the inevitability, I think, that something has to be one way or another. That's taking away from what those composers were able to do.
Yes.
So I think that it's good to recognize that there is that, and there probably was that flexibility. I think with a lot of them, especially the stories you hear about composers who would have the parts but not the actual solo part, but not so they kind of weigh it until
True.
Yeah.
True.
Well, I thought as a last, just as a last thing to show you, because we really appreciate your time on a day that you're also performing.
No, it's a privilege.
I know I was looking back at your discography, and I remember a CD that I got a long time ago, but it was a Rachmaninoff CD. Actually, the Library of Congress has most of the material, most of the music that Rachmaninoff wrote after 1916.
Okay.
Unfortunately, most of his music was written before 1916, so it's a mixed blessing there. But we do have the Corelli Variations, and so I thought that I
would love
might
to
enjoy
see
the CD.
Yes. Yes.
So in the case of Rachmaninoff, we have his collection that came as part of one of our special collections. So that means we have a lot of sketch material, as well as different versions of each work. And so in this case, this was his final copy. But I pulled up his sketches, and the theme is located towards the back. A little bit similar to what he did with the Rhapsody.
Yes.
It has the theme is not located at the beginning of the piece, but it's also located a little bit inward in the sketches. So it kind of came together as he was thinking through variations first, which I think is an interesting.
And the structure, yes,
aspect.
very interesting indeed.
Yeah, but this, essentially, one of the traits of the Rachmaninoff sketches and things that I like to show people is that you can tell when he's sketching or is not so sure about something, because the pencil gets really light.
Really?
And it's some of them are
like
really hard to read.
dictation.
It's the song cycle that has, or song set that has Marguerite key in it. But it's so faint. It's just very difficult to read. But as you can see that in the sketches, but then as he gets more confident with the material.
Oh yes, I see.
And I'll put that.
Yes, yeah, I see what you mean. Yes. Yeah, as if barely touching it. Very interesting.
And I
It's
don't
really
know.
like an esquisse,
Yeah.
on this.
And I'm not trying to psychoanalyze him or anything like that, but it could be that there's something there. But
Yeah. I'm quite sure you're right.
So-
Not quite ready to commit. Basically.
yeah. But then he does get.
But also not wanting to lose sight of the idea. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He wants to make sure that he's putting something down quickly to retain it, or. I think it also depends on whether people are working at the piano, maybe, or not.
Yes.
Because that's
You're right.
Maybe there's a writing desk there or not. But then in the,
Absolutely wonderful.
you're welcome to just page through it. That one's in very good shape. And then when he does get to the final version, it definitely is cleaner. You can see it, everything exactly
as it should be. So yeah,
it's ready to go.
meditated. Yes. Oh yes, here it is again. Yeah, what you were talking about. Yeah.
Is this a piece that you still keep in your repertoire?
Not at the moment, but I played it quite a bit, and I loved living with it for those few years.
Sure.
It's a sublime piece. To the art of composing variations.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
always impressive. Yeah.
You know, we have two of the great. I think this is a great set in its own life, and then the Rhapsody, the Paganini Rhapsody, is another one of those ones where it's just you know, a lot of composers who came after him thought that they were doing something clever by having the theme later, you know, but that's it's already been done. So, but
Yes.
yeah. And then, of course, having the Brahms sets of variations and whatnot, there's a lot of great examples.
Yes.
One of the things that I also like to think about, and if I had more time to study it, I would, is the order in which they come to mind. So that's presuming that that they're writing in sequence, but it's neat to think about how some of these ideas develop out of some of the other variations or kind of come about on their own and then get integrated, because there's an element of integration, I think, of a lot of the ideas and a flow that comes that has to be calculated, but it's not necessarily. I love seeing it when it's not quite there yet. Just
And also shows that when it's meant to be, it aligns itself.
Yeah.
So it does not, as long as the architectural quality is there, then the sequencing is secondary.
Mm.
You know, thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for.
This has been such a special joy, and really.
Well, it's been such a pleasure to speak with you, and I really.
I had no idea I was going to get to see so many wonders.
Oh well, thanks so much for joining us, and I look forward to the concert.
Thank you very much. Thank you.